On the windswept northeastern coast of England, Bamburgh Castle rises high above a massive outcrop of black dolerite. Its brooding sandstone fortifications command sweeping views of the surrounding country of Northumberland, which was once the heart of the medieval kingdom of Northumbria. It is an ornate Norman fortress that was extensively rebuilt by its owners in the 18th and early 20th centuries, though traces of medieval masonry are still visible in many of the buildings. Today, the castle is well known for the Last Kingdom TV series, which tell a story about the Anglo-Saxon Briton ravaged by the Vikings. Though a fortress has probably stood above the crag at Bamburgh since prehistoric times, little is known about the site before the Romans arrived. When they abandoned Britain in the early 5th century, the Anglo-Saxons settled in England. Welcome to Bamburgh Castle. Of course, in the past it was called Bebba'S Fortress or Bamburgh, as you know from the movie Last Kingdom, and with the main character of Uhtred of Bamburgh. So the castle was, or the place was established already before the Romans came here, but it looked completely different, and it was ruled by the Celtic tribe. So the Romans paid them to control the border with Picts, so modern day Scotland. And in the 6th century, the Anglians came. So after the Romans withdrew from the British Isles, some tribes from abroad came here to fill in the space after Romans, and they established here their kingdom. First, it was Bernicia, so it was established at the very beginning of the 7th century, but only the grandson of Ida united Bernicia with the southland of Deira, and the kingdom of Northumbria was created in that way. The grandson's son unfortunately had to go to exile and to Scotland, to Del Riada, what is now part of Iona, and there he lived together with the Hiberno Scottish monks, where St. Columba had established the monastery of Iona before. And there he spent 17 years before he could come back here. Meantime, there was a rival dynasty ruled here under the King Edwin, and some monks were sent from Rome, like Paulinus, who converted the royal court into Christianity by intermarrying noble Christian women. So the pagan King Edwin became Christian, and he ruled, and his rules were quite successful until he was fought back in a battle and he died. So at that time, Oswald came back from Scotland, from Iona, and he got the throne back by force. And after that, he became a king, and he brought Irish monks to Lindisfarne. So St. Aidan, together with his followers, came here, crossing the river Tweed in Norham, and they reached here, and they was offered Lindisfarne to live there and to establish the monastery. So the kingdom of Northumbria started to exist. The castle, of course, changed the hands between different kings of Northumbria, who, after the invasion of the Vikings, became the Earls of Northumbria. Oswald ruled from Bamburgh as the most powerful king in England for 8 years, only to be killed in battle and have his corpse dismembered. Bede the Venerable records that Oswald's followers found his arm, which would not decompose, and they brought it to Bamburgh, where it was kept in a silver shrine. Oswald was later canonized and became the object of a cult that was venerated throughout Europe. The castle's 12th century chapel was likely built on the remains of Bamburgh's 7th century church, and that was probably where Oswald's arm was kept. excavations here, archaeologists found pieces of carved armchair, and they thought that it's actually a throne for bishops. But as it was a secular place, it had belonged to a king. So possibly it was the so-called gift stool. So while a king was sitting on a throne, this was a warrior, his warrior kneeling in front of him, and the king was giving him some gifts. And these gifts were binding the warrior to him during his lifetime, so actually till his death. So one of the stool, a replica of this stool that was found, is actually here in the castle in the courtyard. So we will see it later on.
While the descendants of the Northumbrian kings continued to rule the area around Bamburgh as earls after the Norse invasions, a Viking force successfully sacked the fortress in 993.
So the Bamburgh Castle actually is a Norman fortress now, widely rebuilt in the 18th and the beginning of the 20th century. But underneath the ground of the castle, there are the remains of the Anglo-Saxon citadel, royal citadel, and we mostly know about it due to great accounts left by Bede the Venerable. So thanks to Bede, who lived in the 8th century, we know that this great fortress got a very important royal meaning. So it was a royal citadel and was called the royal city of the kings of Northumbria. So Bede actually, even he left biased accounts. It was one of the most important sources of the English history during the Anglo-Saxon times in the 8th century. The very important is to remember that the name is fascinating because first it was called Bebba'S fortress after the second wife of the King Ida's grandson, Bebba, and then Bamburgh, and finally Bamburgh Castle. From the Anglo-Saxon times, we've got two great findings. So archaeologists found the golden plaque, the so-called Beast of Bamburgh, and the other is a fragment of a sword from those times. There was also found a cemetery outside the castle where the remains of the skeletons of aristocracy were found. And this archaeological finding tells us that this was a very cosmopolitan place. So people from different places came here, from aristocrats. So possibly these were hostages. So people replaced who came here as hostages. So possibly sons of some important rulers from elsewhere. There were people from Scandinavia even before the Viking raids. There were people coming from Southern Europe and from North Africa. So we can imagine this place with the wooden meat hall, the same as it is described in the very important epic poem Beowulf. Some scholars think that Beowulf actually comes from the kingdom of Northumbria. And we've got a beautiful description of the meat hall in the poem Beowulf, where it is decorated, is wooden, decorated with gold and jewels. So possibly Bamburgh Castle got the same meat hall made of wood. But not all of the castle was built of wood. It was partly stone and wooden construction with wooden palisade around and some stone walls.
Northumbria was the first of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to be ravaged by the Vikings. From the castle's battlements, visitors today can clearly see Lindisfarne, where in 793 Norsemen carried out an infamous raid on the island's monastery, a brutal event regarded as the beginning of the Viking Age.